Ich darf Sie zu einer ganz besonderen Podiumsdiskussion begrüßen heute Abend mit großen Namen Bohr, Heisenberg, Born, Frau Beisiegel und Michael Turner an einem ganz besonderen Ort, nämlich in Göttingen, an dem sozusagen die Geschichte, die Sie gerade gesehen haben, ihren Ausgangspunkt nahm. Wir wollen einerseits die Gelegenheit nutzen, die Nachkommen von Herrn Bohr und Herrn Heisenberg und Herrn Born hier zu haben, um so ein bisschen die historischen Hintergründe dieses Stückes nochmal aufzuarbeiten. Wir wollen aber auch die Gelegenheit nutzen, um das in die Gegenwart zu transportieren und die Frage zu stellen, wie wird heute über Wissenschaft diskutiert? Gibt es eine besondere Verantwortung für Wissenschaft? Wo sind heute die wichtigen Themen? Also wir haben sozusagen einen großen Bogen vor uns und ich freue mich sehr, dass ich die Ehre habe, dieses honorige Podium zu leiten. Mein Name ist Ulrich Schnabel, ich bin Wissenschaftsredakteur der Zeit. Ich werde Sie hier durch den Abend führen. Ich möchte Ihnen auch einen abwesenden Gast, einen unsichtbaren Gast präsentieren, Michael Frayn, den Dramatiker, der das Stück geschrieben hat, der sehr bedauert, nicht hier zu sein, der uns aber ein Grußwort sozusagen zukommen lassen hat, das ich ganz kurz vorlesen möchte. Ein Grußwort von Michael Frayn anlässlich der Podiumsdiskussion in Göttingen. Es tut mir sehr leid, dass ich heute nicht anwesend sein kann. Ich hatte leider schon versprochen, in eine Saison meiner Theaterstücke in England verwickelt zu werden. Ich bedauere meine heutige Abwesenheit besonders, weil mir die große Ehre natürlich bewusst ist, dass mein Stück hier in der Stadt, die eine so wichtige Rolle in der Erfindung der Quantenmechanik gespielt hat, aufgeführt wird. Ich bin immer berührt gewesen, dass die Nachkommen sowohl von Niels Bohr als auch von Werner Heisenberg sich meinen Bemühungen gegenüber einer Fiktion über ihre großen Vorfahren zu schaffen, so nachsichtig und verständnisvoll erwiesen haben. Und ich hätte allzu gern die Gelegenheit ergriffen, ihnen zu danken. Es wäre auch schön gewesen, sich mit Gustav Born hier in der Stadt zu treffen, in der sein Vater einen so bedeutungsvollen Beitrag zu den Grundlagen der Quantenmechanik leistete. Gustav ist nie zufrieden gewesen, dass ich keinen Weg in meinem Stück gefunden habe, die Wesentlichkeit dieses Beitrags klarzumachen. Gustav und ich haben uns kennengelernt und sind Freunde geworden, nachdem er mit Recht und auch mit höflicher Geduld hiergegen protestierte. In einer besseren Welt würde ich ein neues Stück über Max Born schreiben und Gustav und ich würden es hier auf der Bühne in Göttingen zusammen aufgeführt erleben. Soweit Michael Frayn. Soweit Michael Frayn, der unsichtbare Gast. Jetzt komme ich aber zu den sichtbaren Gästen, die ich Ihnen kurz vorstellen darf. Ich beginne mit der Dame, Frau Ulrike Beisiegel, die kennen Sie wahrscheinlich alle am besten. Sie ist die Präsidentin der Universität hier und ist aber auch deshalb für diese Diskussion so prädestiniert, weil sie lange Jahre Ombudsfrau der Deutschen Forschungsgemeinschaft war. Daher kennen wir uns auch. Wir haben uns häufig über das Thema Fälschung, Manipulation, Betrug in der Wissenschaft unterhalten. Ich glaube, es gibt niemand Besseren, um sozusagen die Gegenwart zu beleuchten, als Frau Beisiegel. Dann haben wir rechts außen Henrik Bohr, der Enkel von Niels Bohr. Herr Bohr ist ebenfalls Physiker, Biophysiker und leitet ist es in Kopenhagen? Ja. Er ist in Kopenhagen an der Technischen Universität Dänemark das Quantum Protein Center. Und freuen uns sehr, dass er den Weg von Kopenhagen hierher gefunden hat. Ich beginne meiner ganz links außen weiter Michael Turner, ein Professor aus Chicago, der aus Amerika zu uns gekommen ist. Michael Turner ist Kosmologe und er hat den Begriff der dunklen Energie geprägt, die Sie vielleicht alle kennen, diesen Begriff. Da geht es allerdings nicht um die dunklen Machenschaften von Physikern, sondern es geht um die unsichtbare Energie im Kosmos. Er hat heute Vormittag einen wunderbaren Festvortrag darüber gehalten. Und Herr Turner ist eben nicht nur ein guter Kosmologe, sondern er war auch in der National Science Foundation lange Zeit zuständig für die Abteilungen Physik und Mathematik und hat daher einen sehr guten Einblick in die Wissenschaftspolitik, also wie wird auf politischer Ebene über Wissenschaft entschieden. Und ich denke, er wird auch da ganz hervorragende Beiträge zu unserer Diskussion leisten können. Vielen Dank, Herr Turner, fürs Kommen. Dann neben Herrn Turner Jochen Heisenberg, der aus New Hampshire zu uns kommt. Er ist dort Professor für, dreimal dürfen Sie raten, Physik, Kernphysik. Und er hat sich auch in Reaktion auf das Theaterstück von Michael Frayn nochmal intensiv mit dieser Geschichte beschäftigt und er hat eine Webseite aufgesetzt, in der er Fakten zu seinem Vater und zu den Hintergründen dieses Theaterstückes sozusagen präsentiert und er hat sich auch in Artikeln zu diesem Theaterstück geäußert und wir sind sehr gespannt auf das, was er uns heute Abend dazu zu erzählen hat. Vielen Dank fürs Kommen, Herr Heisenberg. Und last but not least, neben mir Gustav Born, Mediziner und Pharmakologe, seines Zeichens, Fellow der Royal Society. Und er ist der Einzige, der die hier aufgetretenen Personen, also Niels Bohr und Werner Heisenberg, noch persönlich kennengelernt hat. Damals im Haus seines Vaters bei Max Born in Göttingen. Und er wird uns sicher ein bisschen was aus dieser Zeit erzählen. Und er hat auch eine ganze Menge Interessantes zur Fortsetzung dieser Geschichte zu erzählen. Darauf kommen wir gleich. Er war einer der ersten britischen Ärzte, die kurz nach dem Atombombenabwurf auf Hiroshima in Hiroshima waren. Und das ist auch ein Erlebnis, das ihn tief geprägt hat. Sie sehen also ein sehr illustres Podium. Ich freue mich sehr auf die Diskussion. Ich muss allerdings eine kleine Vorwarnung machen, da Michael Turner nur Englisch spricht. And he didn't get any word of what I'm just saying now. Und auch Herr Bohr eigentlich besser Englisch als Deutsch spricht und alle anderen auch sehr gut Englisch sprechen, haben wir uns eigentlich verabredet, dass wir diese Diskussion gerne auf Englisch führen würden, da wir sonst Herrn Turner von weiten Teilen des Verständnisses ausschließen würden. Ich hoffe, dass Sie damit einverstanden sind. Wer versteht überhaupt kein Englisch? Ist eine gemeine Frage, ich weiß, ist eine gemeine Frage. Fragen wir anders. Wer würde bevorzugen, die Diskussion auf Deutsch zu hören? Okay, also es ist dann gleichzeitig eine Übung sozusagen in Fremdsprachen, die wir hier durchführen. Okay, now I switch to English. I just explained that we will have to talk in English. And of course, we would start with the piece that we just seen, and the obvious question to Henrik Bohr and Werner Heisenberg is how. Sorry, I'm already in the past. Sorry. Well, the obvious question to you is, how did you perceive this play? Do you think Michael Frayn did a good job, or do you think there are things that you would have changed or would have presented differently? Would you like to start, or Professor Heisenberg? Yeah, take the mic.
Yeah. Ich habe 2 Tagen Deutsch, ja, ich weiß es, aber ich muss sagen hier, dass mein Deutsch ist nicht sehr gut, aber ich habe arbeitet ein bisschen mit diesen Linien, aber das ist gut. Englisch, ich bin viel stärker mit Englisch, aber wir lernen Deutsch in Dänemark. Immer. In der Schule. So I would say I was surprised about talking to Jochen this morning here about the play, and it seems that you have been talking. Yeah, it seems that you have been talking more with Frayn about reality of your father, isn't it? So I think that that the play is very good. I mean, it is yes, it is good because it makes the whole story. It's good for Copenhagen because Copenhagen becomes a more interesting place. It's good, as I also said. Heisenberg is Werner Heisenberg is a hero in Denmark, and he is a hero because the bigger he is, the bigger Denmark is, because he learned He spoke Danish, and he was teaching, and he stayed there, and he made the best science there. So to the Danes, the first thing is that he is famous, and he did a good job. But it's I think that everything is actually mentioned in the play. I think that Bohr was very afraid of Hitler getting the atomic bomb, and this is the overall thing. And Jochen also told, because they were very good friends after the war. Do you all hear? Sie waren wirklich, okay, but during the war they were not good friends, in a sense that it was hard to get across. And especially Jochen said that he talked to his father, and he is closer to the thing than I am. I'm just a grandchild, but you are the son. And now that you have talked, I've also talked to my grandfather, but not about that. I mean, so it is very important that my grandfather was very excited, like the Schauspieler, the people could really play, that he got angry, he got very angry, and Heisenberg should have said that to his son that at certain point he couldn't get across to Niels Bohr anymore.
Professor Heisenberg, why was Bohr so upset? Did you talk with your father about that?
Yeah.
Well, he talked about himself, and he didn't analyze why Bohr got upset. I think he suggested that the idea of that one is able to build a bomb shocked him, and therefore he was upset, and at that point no longer was able to get or hear what the other things that my father was trying to tell him.
And how did you perceive the play? Do you also share the opinion of Henrik Bohr that it's very good, or do you think there are points which you would have changed?
I've seen the play now 8 times at different places. And it is very interesting to see the differences in the production. And one has to keep in mind that this is a play and not a documentary of history. And so you have to distinguish the play from the history. And as a play, I find it a very exciting play, and every one of these 8 performances that I saw are slightly different, and I see new, interesting things, and I think that is a sign of a good play, that it is, even after 8 times, still interesting. I had the fortune to meet Michael Frayn after after the New York performance or opening, and of course he asked whether he had caught the personality of my father in the right way, and at that point I wasn't quite sure. I think there are lots of details that are not quite right, and I can excuse that because he wanted to write a play that is good to see and has the theatrics and all of these things in it. And therefore, I think, for instance, the slow speech of Niels Bohr wouldn't lend itself to be very exciting on the podium here, or on theater. And therefore, you have to make changes of the personalities. And I think there were several changes that were incorrect about my father, which I told him. But then there, like this performance, where all these parts were also played down, And therefore, as a son who knew him, I don't get as much alienated as in the other performances. So it's very interesting to see how different one can perform such a play.
Professor Born, you have known Werner Heisenberg and Niels Bohr in Göttingen, because Göttingen was at that time in the 20s the center of theoretical physics, as we could say. And it was in Max Born's house that Heisenberg made his first steps into the world of quantum mechanics. And I think the word quantum mechanics was invented by Max Born himself. And what I would like to know from you is, how did you perceive these personalities, Heisenberg and Bohr, as a child? And maybe you can tell us about this incident later when you had fled with your family to London, and Bohr came on his way from Sweden to the United States. He made a stop in London to meet your father. Maybe you can tell us about this incident also.
Well, thank you very much. I remember Heisenberg, of course, very well as a child. I was in Göttingen till I was 11 and a half, and he was with my father for 3 years, 23 to 26, and we got to know him very well. He was an extremely friendly young man, laughed a lot, and we all liked him enormously. So the Heisenberg that is shown in the play, as other people have said, was careworn because of the war. And that was the change in personality. But, you know, he was a lovely man, as we say in England, and marvelously clever, and my father admired him enormously throughout. After the war, you said about, he came to visit us twice, once in Cambridge in 1934, and then after the war he came to us in Edinburgh in 1947. I think I showed a picture of that in my talk, and they remained very close friends, despite all the things that had happened. My father understood very well, and at this point I suppose I can say that my father very definitely had nothing whatsoever to do with the development of the bomb. And about Bohr, he was flown, as many of you will know, from Stockholm, or rather from Sweden, in 1943 to London under an assumed name in a mosquito bomber in the bomb bay, and he nearly died because they'd forgotten to switch on the oxygen or whatever. But he didn't. He came to London and under the name of Baker, and his son Oge was with him, and they stayed quite near Buckingham Palace in a hotel, and my father sent me to him with a message. And Bohr was they were on their way to Los Alamos, and my father's message was that he wanted nothing to do with the bomb of any kind. They had, of course, been close friends really all their working lives and remained so.
This is a position that is not apparent in the play. There is, so to say, there are two positions. There is Heisenberg, who wants to prevent the Germans from building a bomb, and there is Bohr, who maybe later helps the Americans to prevent the Germans to have the bomb first. But there is a third possibility, and this is represented by your father, not to be involved with any one of those efforts. And this is maybe the position that Frein could have shown also in the play, but of dramatic reasons he did omit. Did you talk with Frein about that? Did you talk with Michael Frein about this possibility to include a third position?
Yes, I think I probably did. I mean, we only got in touch after the play was performed in London, and I suggested one or two things which weren't very accurate. and he made one or two changes. But I mean, it is a riveting play. I was delighted to hear it in German. I heard it several times in England. And he is a marvelous man. He's a fantastic playwright. He writes extremely funny plays too.
Professor Beisiegel and Professor Turner, I would like to bring you in the talk. And in this play we have seen that personal relations are very important, not only in science, but also in science politics. And now you can say, okay, this is in the time during the 20s or during the war. Today we have science is a big industry, big science, we have big labs, and it has changed completely. Is this so, or is personal relationships, are they still playing a big and important role in science and in talking about such issues?
Science is an intensely human activity. I mean, I think that's one of the things that I think the play really got across well, is that it's not sterile, it's not lab coats, it's real human beings passionate about what they're doing. And I think the play portrayed that very powerfully, and I don't think that has changed today. The other thing that I thought the play portrayed very powerfully, my generation of American physicists were brought up on the triumphs of Los Alamos. I mean, it really propelled physics to the fore, and it propelled science to the fore. I think all of a sudden people realized that science was very powerful, and we have tried to learn the lessons from the bomb, and I still don't think we have. I mean, I think this play shed new light on it, because there's this tension which doesn't come out in the play so much, but comes out in the US, is that physicists were very excited to do this. The idea that the excitement of discovery, and then the question about, well, should we? Or shouldn't we? And I don't think it was thought about as seriously in the United States, not until the very end. I think physicists were consumed with the excitement of doing something new. But I think this play brought out a little bit between Bohr and Heisenberg, the should you even be involved? And of course, those questions now loom even bigger. And what are the lessons that we learn? I don't think we've still figured out the lessons we've learned from the atomic bomb. And we have even more powerful questions before us today, and they're even more varied, from climate to manipulating genes. And clearly, science is extraordinarily powerful and has made people's lives better. But how do we make sure that it doesn't do harm? And we have bigger problems to even grapple with today, and I think the play at least puts that on the table.
Yes, I would really agree, because it's today maybe even more important to remind our students again and again that there is a responsibility of scientists for what they do and what that might do to the world in a way. And it's extremely difficult, because the dedication which we have seen here in the play, and which we all see in daily life, I mean, research is our life, and we do it with the whole body. So then to say no, like your father did, I think it's extremely difficult. But on the other side, it might be the right way really to prevent something. But it's an extremely difficult discussion, and I'm myself working in life science, and you talked about gene technology and how far can we go in influencing life or changing embryos and things like that. It's a very important question, and I think in the end every scientist have to decide in his own heart what to do. And it stays extremely difficult, and it's very important to create awareness about that particular situation. And I think in the university we are not doing it enough today, and that's why I'm really glad that we have seen this play tonight.
Can I say something about the situation? in 1939, my father was drafted into the war effort. It was not his decision to go into it. The government drafted him to perform service to the government. And so when you are in that situation, you don't have a choice. That was different for your father.
Michael Turner talked about the excitement in Los Alamos. Was it more the excitement, or was it also the fear that the Germans could be quicker? Or was it a mixture of both?
So, first of all, I should specify that I wasn't there. But from what I've read and from the people I've talked to, I think it was equal parts the excitement of learning the secrets of the nucleus and actually building the device, and fear about the Germans. And you know, to put it more than equal parts, I think would be very difficult. But I think if you read, it really was the excitement of doing physics. It's very. My colleague Leon Letterman tells a wonderful joke about a physicist who's in Geneva with his wife, and he runs off and says he will meet her, and he comes back late because he's gone off for physics discussions, and he says to his colleague, please put some chalk on the back of my, actually I'm going to screw up this joke. Anyway, he gets back, his wife is afraid that he was doing physics, and he says, no, I was just having an affair. But it's the passion of physics is very, very great, and then you have to balance that against the societal ends, and we constantly see this when we talk about stem cell research or any kind of research. I'm not sure that scientists are able to dispassionately make decisions about what is safe because they're so emotionally involved in the excitement of doing the science.
Well, it's absolutely right, and that is why my father was marvelous for me, and I suppose the young people around him. He was always pretty clear about this kind of thing. And although he was Jewish and we had to flee from Germany, he was quite clear about that. And it's very funny because he said, you know, if they do come to Edinburgh, I have a revolver. So he had a First World War revolver. Didn't work, but he had it in his drawer, and he said, we'll take good care of it.
But to come back to your father, how was it for him to be in London and not in Los Alamos and not in Germany, not being involved in these discussions? Not being involved in the discussions at the time. How was it for him? What did he do during the war? What kind of science did he do?
That's a good question. I'm not a physicist. I'm sure the others would know much better. He'd built up a small school in Edinburgh. He had a very good man from Czechoslovakia. Klaus Fuchs came to him, but that was after the war, before he was entlarvt, we say, auf Deutsch. He went on doing science. He's something called reciprocity theorem. Don't ask me. But he kept on working, and he had pupils and so on. So right through the war he worked, and but he didn't take any active part in the war work.
And how did he react to the news that the atomic bomb has dropped in Hiroshima and Nagasaki? We have heard in the piece of Michael Freien that Otto Hahn wanted to commit suicide because he felt responsible. Yes. And how did your father react to this?
Well, it's very interesting. I mean, I was I was a medical officer in the occupation. What was going to be the invasion force of Japan in India became the occupation force after the 10th of August. And so I went with him to Japan, and as a medical officer, and I was one of the first three or four people from abroad to see Hiroshima. And then we exchanged letters, which are available, actually. And, I said I was unbelievably horrified, and I was delighted he had no part in it. And then he wrote back a rather marvelous letter, which, I can duplicate if people want it, about that.
Can I just say, alternative? I mean, what is the alternative? I mean, it's not a kindergarten. Los Angeles. I like this and I like that. There are theater plays or there are films. There are TV series about Los Alamos, and one man stumbled on something and a woman has some other idea and so on. It looks a little bit like children, but I must say again, what is the alternative? I mean, let's say that some scientists don't like to do this. Then other scientists would do it. I mean, either they are forced to do it or they are, especially forced. In Iraq, they are forced to do it. And also in Iran, I'm sure that they are forced to do certain things. So the only thing we can hope for is this openness about science. I mean, we can just hope for that, because else a dictator will try to use some scientists and so on. We must hear what is going on.
I don't think that you had discussions with your grandfather about his feelings in Los Alamos, or did you?
No, I've talked a lot with my uncle about it.
I mean, you have many scientists in your family.
Yeah.
You are
thanks God. Yeah.
One of those science dynasties. And is this a topic that you discuss in your family? I mean, this ethical side of science, what science should be avoided? Or?
No, it's embarrassing. Yeah, no. It's first of all the issues in science. I mean, I try to make the younger kids interested in it. I mean, that is the biggest thing, because you're afraid that they would not get interested in any of the things, and so that's the biggest thing. But the moral issues, I mean, we're expected to have nice opinions about things. No, but I mean, it's. I just say that yes, you don't want to blow a bomb on somebody or something like that. And there's a moral issues. Of course, there are moral issues. But what to do when some people are moral and other people are not moral? I mean, the only thing I can say is that it's better to be open about it, then people can know what is going on.
Yeah, I think it's certainly a question to be open about it, but it's also important, particularly today, if you're looking in the world of science, there is quite a pressure to be competitive and to get the results first and to be fast, to get grant money, to get publications out. And I'm a little bit afraid that we don't have enough time to think and discuss. I mean, to be open is one thing, but we need some time to discuss science, consequences from the work we have. I mean, the question, just having a bomb or having just a reactor, and other things we do today, where we need more, I think, time to talk amongst scientists and also with the students about the point, what can happen if we go along that way? And is it then that everything which can be done will be done? And yes, I guess probably it will. But then let's really talk about it and see how we can prevent the misuse in the end. And I think that is time which we don't have enough in science anymore. And I would love to take that time and to have those kind of discussions, not only now about the play or about what happened in the past, but what might happen in the future. And that is something I would really like to emphasize.
The questions are really, I agree with everything you say, and I just want to point out a recent example that show that the questions are very, very hard. So I'm going to take it from your field, and you're going to have to help me, but there's been a big controversy about whether or not to publish the details on how you mutated the flu virus to H5N1, where it can be transmitted to humans. And I should reveal that I'm on the editorial board of Science Magazine. And so in the United States, it was recommended that the details of how you can mutate the form of the flu virus that, you're going to have to help me with this, that is not dangerous to one that is dangerous. Two groups had done it. And the question was, do you publish the details or not? And the advisory board in the US said, no, don't publish the details. But make them available to other laboratories so that they can use, to laboratories that can be trusted and might be able to make good use of this. And then the World Health Organization looked at this and said, well, openness is better because it's not quite as bad as it seems, and now there's a bit of a muddle. You probably know more about this, but the questions are never, they're more quantum mechanical, and complementarity and uncertainty is that the solutions are not always clear.
Just a short comment to that. What I think is a good example also in terms of the play, because here really people talk to each other and said both of the papers should not give the details. So I think this is communication. And I mean, what comes out in the end and whether we will in the end publish it or it will be published. But just that even in times like today, that the editors and the scientists say, okay, let's have a moratorium for a while. Don't put it out. Let's think first. I think that is a very good example where, trusting each other and talking to each other prevents to give it out too fast.
So you think that one worked?
I think it's, I mean, whether it will work in the end, but it's just a good example that before fast publication, just lean back for a while, think about whether it's worthwhile publishing or whether you should keep it secret. And that both groups had that.
Agreed.
That was, I think, a very good thing.
Professor Heisenberg.
Well, I think in this particular case, people acted much too late. At that point, especially if one knows it is possible now to do it and there are ways, then every country will say, well, we have to have a lab that studies that so that in the case we can build vaccines and protect our population. And so it will lead to a multitude of labs that will try to do that again. We have seen that in the case of the nuclear explosions, that once it was known it might be possible, they did it out of fear that the others would do that. So I think the only way to do it is by individuals who realize that there is a danger and then simply say, I will no longer talk about that and keep it for myself. I think that's the only way if you really act responsibly to do that.
I think that's the really hard decision Michael Turner talked of. For a scientist to say, no, I don't pursue my science, I think that's really hard. And you don't know if all the others do the same, or if there is maybe your neighbor who says, okay, fine, he stopped his research, I go on and be the first to publish it.
Well, I think you have to make a decision. I mean, if Hahn had realized that it could lead to some nuclear device, he should have then kept it quiet and said, yeah, well, I understand it, but I'm not going to talk about it.
I have a good example from a long time ago when I was at the Medical Research Council Toxicology Unit. One of the young PhDs came from a very poor English family, had done brilliantly, got a PhD, and they offered him, and he worked in the toxicology unit, they offered him a job in Porton Down, which was the chemical warfare establishment. He refused. He said, I want nothing to do with that. And that was at 4 or 5 times the salary that I've never forgotten that, over 60 years.
Well, I think the first... I think the first step to be able to take such a decision would be to be aware of the problems. And this starts, I think, in university. And the question is, do we do enough in universities to make young scientists aware of such questions and problems?
I would say no, we don't, but we should. So actually, when you introduced myself, you said that I was for the DFG an ombudsman. But what is much more important for me to be here tonight, and which really also gives me the feeling to be in a very historical event to have you all here, in particular Gustav Born, is that I worked since I was a student in the peace movement and natural scientists for peace, discussing Pershing and should we have this or that, I mean all this Pagos and so on. And I think in that time, we tried to get colleagues to tell it to the students and to get scientists involved. And yeah, most of the people say, oh, I'm busy with science and it's very important and I'm doing interesting things. I don't want to spend my time talking about the danger of nuclear weapons or anything like that. So I think we are not yet there, that we really have the discussion between the scientists. And I think it's very important still that organizations of natural scientists, or like the DPG who's having the meeting here, that they really put out memorandums and that they really make people talk about it. It's not something that they learn in the university. And I mean, I'm here now for a year, but that's one thing I would love to do. And we will have in fall, we will, together with the VDW, the Vereinigung Deutscher Wissenschaftler, to have a meeting again on that subject. So I think that is something which is very important, and I'm very glad that we are supported by the city and also by our board of directors, who is also Aufsichtsrat or Stiftungsrat. So I think that is something we have to do much more and to bring that into the mind of the students.
If I could just add to that. I absolutely agree, but I want to take it one level higher, because I think we can't fool ourselves that scientists alone have all the power. I mean, I think Joachim, his father was drafted, and governments have a lot of power. And so I think not only do we have to talk to ourselves, but we have to educate the public. And this play illustrated how hard talking to ourselves is. Which I think it did accurately, but talking to the public is even more difficult because they don't understand equations typically, and statistics and uncertainty, but it's very important that they understand it, because at the end of the day, it's our representatives who have to make the decisions. And so they need to understand the issues. And that's very hard. That kind of education takes a long time and a lot of patience, even more than working with our colleagues.
So communication is a risk always, as I know as a journalist very well. But Göttingen is in a sense very unique for a strong movement in the 50s. The Göttingen 18. I don't know if you are familiar with it, with the story. It's the...
I am now.
The Göttingen Manifest, signed by 18 scientists protesting against the intention of the German government to install atomic weapons here in Germany. And your father signed it, and your father signed it, and many other scientists signed it. And it had a great impact on the public opinion during that time. And I wondered, when preparing this discussion, would that be possible today, a thing like this? 18 scientists with a big name and influencing a government, taking a decision in one or another direction?
I hope so. I'm not quite sure, but I mean, one reason why, as I said, we will have a meeting in fall again, and why I'm really glad and thank to Professor Quatt and his colleagues that we have the meeting here now, And bringing up this plate for Weizsäcker, Karl Friedrich von Weizsäcker and Viktor Weisskopf, who was very active in that movement as well in the States. So I think, I hope that if there are serious questions, I could get together those 18 in my university, but I can't promise.
What do you think about the United States? Would that be possible there, a movement like?
I think that's important that prominent people speak out, but I think the work is harder than that because it's so easy just to speak out. And if you look at the 18 here and others in the United States who, for example, helped push for the test ban treaty, you get a big splash when you know, Nobel laureates or famous people say you should do X, Y, or Z, but of course Nobel laureates say all kinds of things and become experts on all kinds of things. And it takes very hard work to keep at it, because it's easy to give speeches, but I think that the people that we're talking about are famous not because they signed a piece of paper, but because they put in the hard work. And I know Weisskopf in the US and Linus Pauling and others. It's very hard work to convince others because wisdom is not imparted. You can't just, I think that's what I've learned as a professor, you just can't take wisdom and put it in a student's head. They have to learn it and discover it themselves. Isn't that right for the students? And I think what politicians do also. And so it's, the education process is very hard work, and it's patiently explaining and listening to other point of views. And so proclamations are important, but I think then there's a lot of hard work that needs to go with it.
Well, I would also like to add that we do have a similar movement, the Union of Concerned Scientists, who tries to do exactly the same. And what was extraordinary here in Göttingen was that after the 20 years under a dictatorship, it was the first time really that citizens rose up and made a statement. And I think that was unusual at that time, and that's why it is so well known. The fact that citizens start up movements happens a lot in the United States and now also in this country. And so I think the spirit has broadened completely. In principle, responsibility doesn't belong only to scientists or science. Responsibility belongs to every citizen to form what society wants to, how it wants to move forward.
This brings me to Denmark again. Michael Turner talked about how necessary it is to communicate, and you said it's a question of every citizen. And I was a few times in Denmark, and I was quite impressed by Danish culture to include citizens in decisions in science. I don't know the right name for it. It's called Bürgerforen or something like this.
Yeah.
And Denmark starts now a little bit in Germany also, that we discovered, there should be dialogue between scientists and the public. But in Denmark, it started much earlier. And maybe you can tell a little bit about the experiences with this sort of dialogue between science and citizens.
Yeah, the first thing is to raise the issue. And I think Nature and Science is very good now. The first pages are mentioning the problems of nuclear weapon spread or about biological weapons, biological experiments, and so on. So these are the first pages, the front page, or the first 5 pages of Nature and Science. And the next thing is that people should that people are interested. I mean, there's a lot of popular science talks, and so that people are aware of the issues that are. And in Denmark, it's scientists have not very much power, because simply people have the power in that but in that sense that if they don't want to have a lab like that, then they have a lot of chemical labs. Novo is one of the major players in Denmark in insulin, in washing powder, with enzymes here, enzymes there, and they just built the factory in Japan. If Denmark doesn't want it, and that's another issue. Then the Danes have to understand to demonstrate against Novo, so they cannot just move the unwanted plants to Hokkaido, for instance, and they have to show solidarity. So I think that that is very important that the newspapers and so on. That's another issue. The newspapers, but the newspapers have to address it. And if most people are reading Bild-Zeitung, I'm not speaking against those things, but Spiegel is so advanced that my German is simply not good enough really for understanding Spiegel, and most Germans I know of in America are saying the same thing. They can simply not understand Spiegel, and Spiegel is addressing all these things, but it has to be Bild-Zeitung. It's called Bild-Zeitung, isn't it? Bild or just Bild.
Actually, I agree with you. I think it's much more challenging to bring in the Bild-Zeitung across what is the important topic in science than in Die Zeit or Der Spiegel. It's much easier. Because, I mean, on first hand you say, it's so simple, it's just 5 lines, but try to put your thesis, for example, in 5 lines, and you will see how difficult it is. The simpler it is, the more difficult it is, I think. Would you agree with that? If you make science very simple, this is a hard job to make science, to condense it on a simple message.
It's very hard, but it's very important also that when we're dealing with very important ideas, if you think carefully about it. Stephen Hawking is the best example. He's an extraordinary communicator. Yeah. Why? Because it's so hard to form the words. So it is possible.
And Einstein said, I'm sorry for interrupting, but Einstein said, if you can't tell your theory to your grandmother, and she understands, then you haven't understood it yourself.
Wollten Sie was dazu sagen zu diesem Thema? Sie zucken so.
Well, I find that these 5-word sentences usually do not catch what they really want to say, and therefore you get the wrong impression and transmit the wrong impression.
I mean, Einstein also said you should make things as simple as possible, but not simpler.
Exactly.
So, and not to give you the impression that we want to persuade you to read the Bild-Zeitung from tomorrow on, I would like to make a final round on the podium because Michael Turner has to leave tonight for the airport in Frankfurt, so it's a big voyage. And we agreed not, because you see, we could discuss here for 2 hours, but
you can go on with that. And then it can be in German.
But I would like, before Michael Turner leaves, I would like to ask everybody here on the podium maybe to summarize. We are not the Göttingen 18, but we are the Göttingen 5. And maybe we can conclude, or what is the conclusion of everybody of us? What do you think should be an important point to make, for example, in education, in universities, or in the communication with the public? Maybe one point that you would like to emphasize for the end of this discussion. Should we start here?
Yeah. I mean, we have to have a role model. Isn't it called a role model? I mean, it has to be the concerned scientist that is forebuilt, or I mean, a role model, and that is important because everybody else. If all the other people see that this is the way to act, and this is a smart person who does that, then we can hope to have it spread out. So I would say that. So it has to be smart courses at smart universities where we are telling people that they have to be concerned about their.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, role models are very important, but I would add then, I think each student really should have a seminar of at least 2 or 4 hours, having discussions like that, discussing this play or examples from current times, like the one you introduced with a mutation. I think that is necessary, and it's not done. And this would be most important, that we really include those kind of discussion in the teaching, and also in the schools even.
Professor Born.
I think to go back to the play, it makes the point of a very good person being put into an impossible situation, and that's extremely clear. I think that's one of the points of the play, of course. I mean, you know, your father was a marvelous man, ethically as well as scientifically, and he was put in an impossible situation. And Victor Weisskopf said, and he was quite right, he changed from a joyful, cheerful, highly intelligent person into somebody who was quite bedrückt, and to use the German word. And I think that point is very well made, and the scientific the responsibilities we all have as scientists in our different fields are of overriding importance, and there I think I speak for my father too.
Well, I live in the United States, and the problems there are a little bit different, but let me talk about that perspective. I'm constantly annoyed that in the United States the difference between opinion and fact is constantly washed out. And I think it is the task and responsibility of scientists to make sure that the difference is understood, that everybody knows what scientific thinking is, where it applies and where it does not apply. There are certainly lots of areas of our reality where we don't need scientific thought, but there are as many where we need it. And I think that has to be clearly distinguished and understood. And so I think the task force as scientists is to give much more education to make people aware of that distinction. And the main task is to establish these facts, and then I think it is the task of the society as a whole to decide on the basis of these facts of what they want really for their future.
Thank you very much. Well, all of these comments, I agree with all of them. And I don't have much to add, although I kind of resonate with Gustav and Joachim that it is a real privilege to be a scientist. I think we would all agree with that. And it's very exciting to explore the secrets of nature. And with privilege goes responsibility. And I think that's what the two of you were saying. And I think the responsibility is to try to make sure that science is used as a powerful, good force. It's always a powerful force, that we've demonstrated, but a good force. And we don't have all the moral wisdom. I don't think scientists have all the moral wisdom. And we have to engage the larger society. And coming back to what Joachim said, that means educating them. And education, many of us are professors. Education is very, very hard. And it requires an enormous amount of patience. And sometimes, I think I'm expressing a similar thing that you feel in the United States, the student isn't very willing. And but that makes that the responsibility is still there, and to try to educate, and it's a moral decision that we all have to make. We as scientists aren't particularly, I don't think we are particularly more moral or less moral than others, and the decisions are so profound that we have to engage everyone.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much. I learned one new word this evening. It's quantum ethics in the play, and we're still not there yet. But I think we are working on it, and this evening is one step on the way to such a quantum ethics. I thank you very much for coming here, for sharing your thoughts with us, Professor Turner, Professor Heisenberg, Professor Born, Frau Beisiegel, Professor Bohr. I think it was a very unique evening, especially for me, and I hope it was also an interesting and unique evening for you. And I thank you very much for your patience being here, not only during the whole play, but also during the whole discussion. Nobody left. It's quite astonishing. It seems to be interesting for you. Thank you for your concentration. And thank you for coming here, and thank you for sharing your thoughts with us. Guten Abend.